Thank you very much. So, well, many thanks, no, to have the opportunities to present here this work, no, that we are trying, no, we already know, no, that HPV vaccination coverages globally, there are a few exceptions, but are kind of suboptimal. And our question, no, while producing all these WHO HPV vaccination coverage estimates for all these series, no, from 2010, from for 2019, is that really if there was some kind of room for improvement, no, and I want to present here, no, this trend analysis we have been conducting this last month at ICO to look at that. So just to see where we are now, this is the current situation and the global status on the HPV vaccination introduction worldwide up to April, no, 2021. WHO considers that 112 countries, this is almost 60% of countries, have introduced HPV vaccines. That means that they have introduced the vaccine into their national immunization program. And no, as we can see on the map, no, there are still huge differences at geographical level, and the Americas and Europe are still not the regions that have introduced the most. But well, this is introduction, and then there is what happens, no, once the country introduces. So are the latest estimates we have for HPV vaccination coverage. This is estimates for 2019 that were released in 2020. And here we have, no, for all the countries that we could produce data, this is 99 different countries that had at least one of the two estimates for the final dose or for the first dose of vaccination. In blue, the final coverage estimate, and in yellow, the first one. And what we can see is that if we take the final dose, no, very few countries are at the top, no, have achieved coverages over the 90%. If we put together all these coverage rates, the performance in 2019 of all these programs, no, the average, no, performance coverage worldwide, and there were not striking differences between high income or low income countries. No, the average coverage performance was 68% for the first dose and 54% for the last dose. Okay, and while looking at this, we also looked back and tried to see if that was all, no, if this mean was always the same, no, if in previous years that was the same performance. And what we saw looking at the whole series is that what it's appeared to be is that the performance of the vaccination program during the first 2 years of introduction was a very strong predictor of the level of coverage in the subsequent years. So, no, the coverage with what you started from was more or less the coverage that you continued to be over time. So this is just no, this analysis. This is a very rough analysis, no, putting together all the data, but we could see, no, this is for HPV-1. This is the first dose, no, that if we put together, not the average, this is the distribution, no, of the coverages, no, for the first 2 years of the program compared to the distribution, no, in the following years. There was a slightly increase, but that was not statistically significant, and we did not see any difference between high income and low and middle income countries again. So kind of seemed not that they always were, there were no difference between the first 2 years and the following years. But looking a little bit and stratifying a little bit more the analysis, no, there is some kind of slight increase between the first box and the second box. What we do so is that, yes, no, if we stratify not by income, but by the level, the magnitude, no, of the coverage achieved in the first 2 years, no, there seemed that if you started very low, the countries made an effort to increase, and there was a statistically significant increase over the following years. And that was not the case when the countries were starting over 50% coverage rates. Okay, so this is why we say, okay, let's look at this. And as you can see this in this box plot, even though the countries that started very low did improve over time, with some kind of exceptions, that they started from here and went up to almost 80% or 90%. Most of them increased, but they did not achieve higher levels than 50%, 60%. So it's an improvement, but it's not like you are jumping from very low coverage rates to 90, the milestone of 90% coverage. But with that, we wanted to look a little bit closer, country by country, to see if all countries behave the same, and this was a general pattern of all of them. So what we did is we conducted a trend analysis, and we tried to compare trends. But as a lot of countries did introduce very recently, we could only include in the analysis 57 different countries, because we needed that at least they had 4 valid data points. So the countries that just introduced in 2018 or 2019 couldn't enter in the analysis, and there have been a lot of introduction in these 2 last years. So in this analysis, we have kind of a underrepresentation of low and middle income countries, that have the ones that have been introducing lately. But again, we have 57 countries, 36 are high income countries, and 21 are from low and middle income countries. What we did is to conduct joint point regression analysis. We calculated annual different percent changes and the absolute differences in the coverages. We also did coefficient variation analysis to classify countries. At least what we did is all this kind of analysis, and we kind of ended up with a classification of countries according to the trends of the first dose, on increasing trends, decreasing trends, stable trends. Well, changing, that means that had different trends over time, that then sometimes they have an increasing trend and they went down or up, whatever. We will see it in the following slides. Or we couldn't say anything about them because it was inconclusive. So let's go to the results. So that was from the 57 countries that met the inclusion criteria and entered the analysis. 9 we couldn't classify. Most of them were very small countries that with very low numbers that were kind of unstable, so they couldn't be analyzed. But if we exclude them, what we can see is that most of the countries either have an increasing trend or a stable trend. And if you stratify the countries by the introduction coverage, okay, the ones that started the lower, most of them presented with an increasing trend, and the ones that started over 50% coverages, most of them presented a stable trend. So let's look a little bit. I will put some examples for you to see the different behaviors of countries. So of the 18 countries that presented an increasing trend, this is we have more or less, this is the more general pattern. Very few countries do what it's Lithuania example, that to start very, very low and in a very short time to increase, like 40 points the coverage. It's usually what you see is this kind of patterns, the ones from the US, the Switzerland or Germany, that over time at a slow pace, they are increasing, but very slowly. So yes, they start, no, and maybe in a 10 years time, they increase an absolute difference of 20 points prevalence. But in any case, this is Palau, for example. This is a very small island from the Pacific. And sometimes this is possible, not to start very low and to reach very high coverage rates, but this is kind of an exception. So the most common patterns are these ones, a different level of starting points. But you see, and you also have a lot of heterogeneity between countries. Some of them have a lot of difference between. This is the first dose. Sorry, I haven't said anything about that. The colors. So the gray line is the first dose trend, and the violet one is the final dose, the second dose trend. And some countries, no, the two curves are very close, and or more distant. It depends a little bit on the country, but this is what. And if you want like an average, this is kind of difficult to say, but what we could compute is like on average, okay, the countries that were had this kind of increasing trends, what they did is more or less on a 6-year average time per year, they did increase like 3 points the coverage. This is absolute points, okay? And again, no, if they started very low, from lower than 50%, the increase was higher, the magnitude, than if they started with higher coverages. But in any case, again, what I said, they increase very slow, but so they do improve, but they do not reach the target coverages. So other countries present these patterns. So this is, they start at whatever starting point, and then they increase and until they reach a top level, and then they stabilize over time. Okay, this is a second pattern, but very few countries presented that. When we will have, I suppose, more data on and more, and we could include more time series, I suppose that more countries will shift from an increasing trend to this kind of behavior, to have first an increasing trend and then stabilize at some kind of level. So the other ones, not that they kind of are stable again. So this is other examples. So at different levels of starting, of baseline coverages, what you see, Iceland that performs very well from the beginning and has maintained these coverage rates. Malaysia, same pattern. Argentina that has very different coverages performance between the first and the second dose, but kind of maintains the same performance rates over time. Or other countries from Europe that are kind of at this mid-range coverage magnitudes and kind of maintain the same levels, even it seems a little bit decreasing, but we have to see the following coverage rates. So a very few we have seen that most of them either increase or stabilize, but there are very few that have this decreasing pattern. We have seen this Bulgaria and Japan that have been examples in the previous talks of countries that have have several problems and even went almost 0% coverages. But also we are observing some countries like Panama, South Africa, or Portugal that were kind of maintaining, but the trend is slightly going down over time, or this without any evident problem of the, or they are do not facing any vaccination crisis. So here's the final though, these mixed patterns of trends, and these more or less are the countries that can be classified, the ones that have faced no vaccination crisis, like Colombia, no, Denmark, Ireland, no, that started very well, and then they faced these confidence problems, then went down, and now, no, with a lot of efforts, no, involved, they have started to recover and have shown that also, no, they have recovery capacity, and also it's also possible, but it's not so easy, no, to go back to the baseline levels and to start and to recover, to fully recover. And also, no, you have other ones that maybe, no, over time they see that their coverages are low, sorry, or they are even worsening, and then kind of go up again. So to conclude, very few countries we have seen achieve final coverages higher than 90%. Most of the countries show increasing or stable trends, and among the countries that started with the lower coverages, the increasing trends are more common. However, with very few exceptions, the pace of the increase of the coverages tends to be slow. So we think that no, based on all these, the HPV vaccination, all this evidence supports, no, that HPV vaccination implementation should be well planned and aim for high coverage from the beginning, because if countries, no, behave like these ones, no, it's usually, they usually maintain or even improve, even at slow pace over time, but this is the most common pattern, but they still, no, are more or less with some kind of room of improvement from the baseline levels. And also, no, to learn about the, no, the countries that have faced very vaccination crisis, that they have also shown that there is recovery capacity, and that it's possible to get back to baseline levels, but it takes some time as well. So many thanks.